що ж, починаємо.
So we can start. We are very glad to invite you and to hear you, to see you during our final discussion, our today Minsk Forum discussion. It's our final discussion. We had two workshops during this day. It was about gender rights and LGBT. It was first workshop, and second workshop was about Belarus in Russia's war against Ukraine. And now, during this session, we have to speak. We have to talk about results of our workshops, what kind of issues, what kind of issues we can take, what ideas we have. Maybe we have, or you have, some recommendations for Belarusian society, for international stakeholders. So it will be the project of our today work. So what we can say after all day work today. And now, I would like to invite here moderators of these workshops for small talk, for small discussion about their speaking. So Julia Mickiewicz, please take a seat. Julia was a moderator. Oh, something fell down. Julia was a moderator of a workshop about gender and queer rights aspects in the Belarusian context. So they were speaking about Belarus, and Kamil Kleshinsky, he was a moderator of the workshop about Russia's war against Ukraine and the role of the Lukashenko regime in this war. So, colleagues, what can you tell us about your discussion? What kind of discussion it was, and what do you think after all these discussions? So please, Julia, the floor is yours. I think we will start today from your workshop, and later we'll go to Kamil. Okay, I can take about my own opinion, but I think that today is very important to hear, first of all, what kind of feelings had our participants. If you will talk about me, everything was perfect, group dynamic we have, and we had very good. We were speaking in one language. So during my presentation, I will take later why it's good. Then people understand what is going on when they edit each other. But from the other side, why it's not so good and why we have to change this. I had two roles at the same time. I was a facilitator, and at the same time, I was a participant. So I saw from outside how the work was. So I was like a bear. I saw in different small groups what they were doing. And from the same times, I was a participant because I also try to discuss and to tell what I'm thinking about these topics. But now I think that we can speak about results later. Okay, thank you. Kamil, what can you tell us? What can you tell us about the process? Oh, for me, it was great adventure, and very interesting experience. In my everyday life, first of all, I'm working with analytic materials. I'm not a moderator of workshops in everyday life, and for me it was a new experience. So I tried to do this analyzer. So, okay, we have a pretty big group. We were together in this room. We started here because it was a lot of participants. So I've understood that we have to divide this group in some smaller groups, and due to this, our work will be easier. So if I will take this, I saw these questions and I saw that there are a lot of people interested in Belarus. If we are speaking about legal issues, about foreign politics, about country which take part in this war, not in big scale, but Belarus, yeah, it's a part of the war now. So we have a lot of different topics. We were speaking about the responsibility of Belarusian regime, about this war, about repressions. Of course, they're going very deep. They were starting in 2020. They did not start together with the starting of war. We also were speaking about Belarusians inside the country, about usual Belarusians and about active Belarusians, how we can help them. Of course, we were speaking about political prisoners, and we were speaking also about Belarusians abroad, about Belarusian society abroad, and about West, which is together with the Belarusians and is trying to support. So we created 3 working groups, and you will see this due to our presentation. I think that it was very interesting. I was switching between these 3 groups, but I wasn't a participant of any of them because I thought that it would be not fair play, because if I would be a part of one of the group, then maybe my moderator's role wouldn't be so perfect. But it's a very interesting idea, and I will think about this next time, because due to this, I can have another perspective. Yeah, and maybe it's a good lesson that we can do it in different ways. But for me, amazing was really good energy, powerful of this discussion. People were working really good. I didn't was a bad teacher. No, they wanted to do all this by themselves. So people really were interested in all these issues and topics. They tried to make some results. It was a lot of emotions, especially when we were speaking about political prisoners, because a lot of people had and has now different tragedies. And it's really very important that it's not a theoretical topic. It's a really experience of people which was in Belarus. Yeah, they were here. Sometimes they even was in prison. So for me, it really was a very interesting discussion, and I'm sure that we have to make such events more often, because during all my life, almost 16 years as an analytical worker, I've took part in different conferences. But for me, workshops, they're more useful. It's more practical. It's more interesting for all participants, and this is more interactive. So I'm really very glad, and I think that you will also see all these interesting results of our work. So I hope you will see it right now, detail working of our group. Thank you, Kamil. So now we can go to more. Now we can go to these results of this group. So maybe we will start from the first group, Julia. Yeah, maybe you want to invite here some of the participants of this group. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Да, надо немножко отодвинуть. Да.
I think that we have to move this a little bit here.
Да, в первую очередь я хотела бы сказать.
First of all, I would like to say that for us it's very important to hear your feedback about our presentation here, because we were working on these issues during all the day, so maybe our view is not really fresh now. And for us, all your ideas, all your additional information, what can we change? It will be very interesting for us. Maybe you will have word for discussion and your ideas. So please. Okay, we have to move, but where we can move? Okay, here. Maybe you can take a seat here, yeah? I will give you microphone later, yeah? Okay, now we will start with slide. We have two pages on flip chart. Maybe you don't see exactly what did we write, but I will tell you. I think that the most important result for us, it's like when we are speaking about topic, about gender right and queer rights aspects in the Belarusian context, we can observe next thing. So it's not really often we can speak about these topics because it's not the important topic, it's not the important idea for the working with this topic. So now we took three main actors when we were speaking about this. It's Belarusian society, democratic Belarusian for Belarusian democratic forces, and independent media. So now we told during this process of discussion, we call this as like very complicated discussion of this model, and now Zhenya will take more exactly. Okay, so we have a model where we have three actors. It's Belarusian society, media, and democratic forces. So now we can take that Belarusian society, most of them, Belarusian society is not ready to invite LGBTQ society, and this topic is really difficult for our society. So that's why in media this topic is not really popular, and Belarusian society don't ask about these topics, democratic forces. And in nowadays, not all democratic forces are ready to speak about those issues. Because now we have no this discussion about these topics in good level. That's why there is no some discussions in media, and Belarusian media do not wide and popularize these topics. So it's like vicious circle. This is repeating all the time, and from this point we are not going anywhere. So that's it. Thank you. I will add something because, yeah, thank you very much because I'm on this topic almost 25 years, so I can tell you that now they're trying to make ghetto due to this topic about, and I can take about those people, for example, representatives of LGBT community, maybe feminists, child-free guys, and something else. But normal people, they have another serious problems, difficult problems. But gender and queer rights aspects, it's something not popular. And during our workshops, during all this, almost during all our time, we were discussing about the problem, how to speak with society about these topics. What can we tell about independent media? And of course, we want to tell that gender equal rights, it's about all of us. It's not a problem only of those people from those groups. It's a problem for all of us. And when we are speaking about representatives of those groups in some institutions, if they are responsible for gender aspects, from one side it's very good, but from other side it's bad. For example, in coordination council they have theme group, so in this case, another representatives of this coordinating council, they are talking to us. No, we have another issues and we have theme group, so they have to deal with gender questions. But how do you think, how many people is in this theme group in coordination council? Okay, but another persons from coordination council, they are not interested in these gender and queer rights aspects. And the same is in the cabinet. So we have a Harbunova, she's a representative of a social aspect group. She's also LGBTI community representative. So everybody is thinking, Olga can deal with this, or maybe representatives of theme group. They can go over there, but it's not about us. So we are speaking about this vicious circle, this closed circle, that democratic politics don't want, they are not, or don't have courage to do something with this closed circle. They don't want to work with society about these topics. But for me, the role of politics is to go ahead with difficult moments, with difficult topics and issues, and to show that if we are now in Europe and we are trying to be a part of European Union, so European values, it's inclusive issues, it's equality. So we were speaking about those topics, and we want to speak about these topics in context of human rights. Yeah, for me, you see this slide, and here you can see the most important topics and problem spheres if we are talking about democratic forces and independent media. But for me, it's the most important arguments from different sides. Why you are speaking about this again and again? It's really a very specific topic. Why you are speaking about this? If we have repression in Belarus, if we have nuclear weapon in Belarus, we have Wagner's army. So why you are speaking about this topic? So how you can speak about something like this? But at the same time, a lot of people, maybe few people knows that at the same time in Ukraine, because why you're speaking about this? Because they're also speaking during the war in Ukraine. Ukraine signed a Istanbul Convention. In Ukraine, there are campaigns about women in army. In Ukraine, also they have companies about soldiers, about gay society, also in armed forces. So Ukraine demonstrates that they have different representatives in army, not only strong men, like conservative, like usual man, a strong one, and good men, like they are fighting for their motherhood. No. In Ukraine, we have different campaign about women, about gays. So, and these arguments, they're not actual right now. They're not actual right now. So, what else we can tell you? I think that this is a recommendation, one of the recommendation after our work. So, it's like we can take and address this recommendation to the organizers of Minsk Forum. And Irina told us that when we are closing and when we know only people which are working about this topic, it's not a good idea because we can't invite in this problem. We can't invite into this problem and other people. So, but we have to speak about them louder, wider, because it's really it's going on about human rights. Because everybody has their own identity, and it's really very important uh, to talk about this with politics, to promote these topics, and we have to talk with politics. And they are speaking about democracy, so they have to remember about these issues. And one of these recommendations is to make these topics very important for our society. For example, if we are speaking about, for example, about ecology. So ecology is also about gender. If we are speaking about Belarusian identity, it's also about gender. If, for example, we are speaking about national uprising, so it's we can use for these different tools, not due to language, culture, but also due to gender. And it's also very important to remember about all these issues, don't to close for all these problems. Yeah, because we know about this. Thank you. We have time issues. We also want to invite participants from the other workshop. But I have a question. You're very you spoke about this problem in a very interesting way. So please tell us what kind of decisions you can offer. Maybe what can we do with this closed circle? So society it doesn't care, and democratic forces doesn't care, and again, what kind of ideas you have? How we can deal with this problem? What can we do? I think that problem always gives us decisions. If we are speaking about politics, it's first of all to take responsibility and to have political, to be strong political, and to don't be afraid of speaking about these issues. If we are speaking about a society, so for me, we need to organize information companies, advocacy companies, company in media. But the most important is to be interested in these problems. And we see this in different countries. And of course, if we are speaking about politics, it's very important to remember that politicians, they are roles models. So it depends. So we can decide. We are choosing politicians, and they have to do something for us. Yeah, so maybe you have questions, Pavel. Please use the mic. I will bring it to you. Thank you for presentation. I'm sorry because I was a little bit late, but I've heard second part. So I have a question, next question. Of course, I understand that we are democracy forces, we are trying to use a European agenda, and also we remember about human rights and LGBT rights. But we remember about the Belarusian situation, and in Belarus situation we have from one side this patriarchally discourse, and it don't change, and our media can change it like one, and it's okay. And we have aggressive propaganda from the state. So they're speaking, you are democratic forces, you are all LGBT, and you're just fighting for these rights. So this is your West values. Indeed. So in this case, when we start to speak about these topics in our patriarchal society, and if you remember about this propaganda, which is speaking about these issues, so what can we do? What can do democratical forces? What can we do to be a leader of society? So, because I think, and we know what we want to be, we want to promote democratical values. So, what can you tell us about this? All right, I can start. Let's see. First of all, if we are speaking about our patriarchal society, about our people. So what we have to remember, for example, in film group, we made some issues, and we asked how many people think that gender aspects are really actual, and most of them told us no. It's not. Told us no. It's not really actually. But when we asked what kind of issues are actually for you, everybody was speaking about these gender problems, different salaries, sex problems. So all this stuff, which we are calling gender problems, and nobody's working with this. Only small groups of people. You told us that our media they do a lot, but they can't speak louder because propaganda in Belarus is really strong. And I agree with this, but I do not agree that media is doing a lot because they have editors. They don't want to speak about this topic sometimes, and they are telling we have no female experts, so we don't have them. It's really different aspects, but I think that in media it's not enough such issues. Propaganda is using this topic. Even if politicians do not speak about this. So if somebody will start to speak louder about these gender issues, propaganda don't do nothing. Okay, I will add some things because for me, this question is not property. For me, problem is connected with the state propaganda because they really use this topic connected with traditional values, and now it's mainstream in Belarusian state propaganda. It's one of the part of a Ruski Mir, a Russian world, and it's really very dangerous because Belarusian propaganda also speaking about Russian propaganda, but when we are speaking about Ruski Mir, a Russian word, we are thinking that it's about national history, language, and culture. But these traditional values, but it's like fake traditional values. It's also Russian, Ruski Mir. So it means that for us, I'm sure that it's really problem for us Belarusians, because if Belarusians would be really so tolerant, like we are speaking, like we are thinking about this, so in this case, propaganda doesn't work. But we see now that it's really a sickness, and we have to do something with this illness. We have to use educational companies and informational companies, and in my opinion, every NGO can do something with a gender aspect in their activity, and they to show this. Uh, we don't need to be feminist or LGBT representative. Everybody can do this. So every organization can organize this gender politic. So let's do this, and it will be really a strong push up for public opinion. Oh, thank you. Maybe you have one more question, please. Alexander Arsenov, Belsat. So you told us that you have no opponents, but I'm a journalist, and I offer this topic for my editor, or I asked speechwriter of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya about this difference in salaries between women and men, or about this violence in the prisons. But they can tell they tell me, everybody has low salaries, so everybody is in bad situations. So how in these cases we can tell that it's really very important topic for us if everything is really so bad? Maybe I do not understand your question. So how we can, okay, so how you can tell your editor about this topic, and how you can tell them that it's really important? Okay, so practical issues. Maybe I will not give you any concrete information, but I think that we can tell that some of our actors is guilty. We can say that media is guilty, or politicians are guilty, or society is guilty. I think that it's a complex problem, and we are speaking about this during our workshop, and we need to work with each of these groups. Of course, it's difficult to tell you, to give you any recommendation how you can persuade your editor. I think it's really long-term work with all sectors of Belarusian society. Thank you. Maybe I will tell you about example. Yesterday we have 2 days, Teachers' Day and a day of people of age people. How many men teachers and women teachers are in Belarus? We can find this information in independent media. Among all teachers in Belarus, men is only 13%. And we are starting to speak about this topic. Why among Belarusian teachers, only each 13 is a man? And we can speak about this topic. So we have so different aspects, so different interesting about all different questions. And about elderly people, how many men and how many women? Yeah, we have less seniors men. So 40% about seniors, it's men. And women are living longer, 4 times longer than men. So just you can take how many informational topics you can show for your viewers and readers. How Belarusian men and women live, what kind of problems they have. So, and I think you can speak about this topic from different views. Okay, so if everybody is suffering, why we need to speak about separate group? But it doesn't mean that we don't have to speak about some social problems and some small groups. Maybe for me it's not so, it's not very good way to compare suffering. I remember such article that sometimes in independent media we can read information that there are more men prisoners, but for me it's not correct way of comparing, because we do not see a lot of women suffering. So sometimes we do not see everything. We do not see all tools, all kind of repressions through relatives, through families, and through children. It's it's a huge topic, but it doesn't mean that we do not have to speak about them. Okay, so now please, thank you. We would like to thank our colleagues. Results of workshops work you will show online later in digital regime together with this translation also. And now I would like to invite representatives of another workshop. They were working about Russians' war against Ukraine and the role of the Lukashenko regime in this war. And this topic was really very big. They divided this topic into some issues. Kamil, maybe you can tell us once again about this logic of this divide part, about this free smaller group. Okay, so I told you that we have pretty big group of participants, and we have really very big topic because in this war, not only Belarusian regime is taking part, Belarusian society is also suffering. Also, Belarusians abroad are suffering due to this topic, and West has a big problem now. So I asked organizers, and I asked about this possibility to divide this big group, and I would like to analyze deeper three topics. So I told you that we focus about Belarusian abroad, Belarusian in Belarus, what is going on with them. It's really very important to remember about them, because when we are speaking about democratic society, we are speaking about opposition, Lukashenko's opponents, and then we we're speaking about immigration, about Belarusians abroad, but it's not everything, yeah? It's very important to remember about Belarusians inside Belarus, and very important to understand in what kind of conditions they are living. And, I think that we do not know everything, yeah, to be sincerely. So we have to understand our possibilities and our situations. So we have separate group about this topic, a separate group about Belarusian migration, Belarusian regime, and their responsibility for the war and for everything what was going on in Belarus after 2020. So I would kindly ask representatives of our group to talk about our results after our work, after our small workshops group. So I think that we can start from this group, which we are analyzing this group in context Belarusian regime. Kirill Kostyan will tell us about this PhD. Okay, so 10 minutes because we have a lot of questions. Thank you very much for this possibility to talk about the results of our workshop group working. When we are speaking about Russians' war against Ukraine, we can see two groups of questions. We see Russian and we see Ukrainians. From one side, we see situation about Russian propaganda speaking, and from another side, we are dealing with Ukrainian discourse and about victory of Ukraine. But at the same time, we have to remember about Lukashenko regime role in this war. So we tried to answer to the question, what do we have to remember about in context of public discussion in Belarus? And in this case, the most important question is to have Belarusian context, even in these difficult conditions. We're speaking about foreign policy. So sometimes we see a situation where Belarusian topic very often is not really interesting for foreigners actors. Maybe sometimes it's not main topic, it's secondary or even frontal topic, and unfortunately, we have to speak about situation in which Belarus has to be in the center of this discussion. Problem of civil society, Belarusian society, Belarusians abroad and Belarusians inside Belarus. We have to remember about all these issues. Another topic we were speaking about, it's a problem of definition. Is Belarus occupied or not? And here we are dealing with different views on this topic, and if we are speaking from the lower part, Belarus is not occupied territory, but on the other side we have a lot of groups of questions which can tell us that Belarus is occupied. We can speak about different persons connected with a regime which also talking us about occupied Belarus. So in this case, law, we don't have to take a law literally like in different documents, because problem of international law in this context is really big, because these tools can't help us in the advocacy Belarus as occupied country. But at the other side, we can use hybrid theory in the context. So hybrid war, hybrid steps from Russia. And in the Belarus context, we can speak about hybrid occupation. So in this way, we can adopt this context and this discourse, and it's really useful. Another side of this problem is Belarusian responsibility, and we have three actors in Belarus. We have society, let's call this in this way. We can also say about some democratic structures. It's a state and it's a country and regime or administration of Lukashenko. So if we will see all documents which European Union has or in some European countries connected with Belarus, we can see that we have no we have no common way of this in these documents. In different documents, we have different names of this problem, and sometimes they are speaking about regimes, sometimes they're speaking about society, and it's making harder to be to fight about Belarusian interests. And in some cases, when we are speaking about political prisoners, EU structures using the name Belarusian authorities. But when they are speaking about Belarus responsibility, they are talking about Belarus, although they are thinking about Lukashenko's regime. And it's not good for Belarus and for advocacy of Belarusian questions. At the same time, we are thinking about Belarusian society, and we are very critical about what is going on, about all this stuff, and about why Lukashenko regime is sustainable. Why did Lukashenko start the war? Why regime is still alive after the demonstration in 2020? So we also have experience of other countries, historical experience. We remember about World War First, World War Second, and not. Also, we can speak about Georgian situation in 2008. We remember about Karabakh history. It's all of us remember about this situation. It's very loud topic now in media, and I think that these reflections of Belarusian society about what the regime is doing, I would like remember about experience of other countries in this context, how they deal in these topics in similar situations, because they have to interpret some of these situations. It depends how we're speaking about all these topics. And last issue, it's justice for Belarus. And here we are speaking very often about a Lukashenko regime and about kidnapping of Ukrainian children and Belarus for taking rest in camps, in fake camps. And in this case, we can take about Putin and Belov responsibility. They try to have a justice. I hope that it would be a good way to use this jurisdiction. But if we are speaking about materials of this case, we can see that all this stuff connected with aggression, with Russia's aggression against Ukraine, it's much more easier for the finding the reasons. Somebody can tell us that in Belarusian context, all these crimes during during these 29 years, they make smaller. But from the other side, it's also a possibility to use in the future this jurisdiction to make Lukashenko response for all these things we had in Belarus during his government. So the same we can take about if we are speaking about sanctions, about if you are speaking about business regulation in context of Belarusian society. So of course, justice, it's a very important question in Belarus in the context of this regime dealing. We have to remember about civil society, and I'm sure that we have to do our best to speak about this issue and to make this issue stronger in context of international stakeholders. Okay, so maybe you have a question, please. Thank you very much for these results. Yeah, I've heard, but maybe you can take deeper how we can use our historical experience in those situations when some countries did not respond for their regimes. For example, I'm speaking about what was second. Italy started with cooperation with Hitler, but later Italy was fighting with Hitler. So we have a lot of examples of such situations. France during de Gaulle government. De Gaulle made France a country which had victory. So how we can use this historical experience in the context of nowadays Belarus? So what kind of entrance we can find for Belarus? What kind of exit to make Belarus not aggressor but in player in some other league? You know, it's very simple question, but from another side, it's very hard question. And I have no answer for this issue. I, I think that Belarusian civil society, which one is really very active, we can see this activity, his activity in democratic countries. We have to speak about this, speak wilder. We have to remember that regime doesn't have public mandatory from Belarusian society to do what it does. We have to remember about these political prisoners which are now in prisons, or about those who are not in prisons now, but we have to remember about all this society experience. We have to speak, we have to remember. So if we are speaking about reflections, it's very important that yeah, you were speaking about example of France or Italy, and it's really a very good topic. Yes, so we have parallel regime and society. So maybe it's strange, but for example, Armenia and Azerbaijan, it's terrible history. From one side, we have problems with others population where it was occupied. Now they are deoccupied, but Aliyev's regime is really cruel now. So, but this is a question about other topics. Is Armenia in this context like a counter-aggressor? I think no. It's also, we are speaking here about Armenian lobby, and we have to remember about this. So now Azerbaijan has control on this, on his territory, but now Karabakh's population is suffering. So we have different examples when these or that circumstances can help us to be to make advocacy of some society and concrete group. And here we have to speak about this, of course. So in this question, I think I can recommend Belarusian activists to remember about Belarus, first of all, and to have Belarusian centrism. Okay, so let's speak about working result of one group, small group. You were speaking about democratic forces in Belarus, so Alexander Ivatov. Oh, what? Yeah, microphone. Okay. Our group was speaking about democratic forces, about war and immigration, especially about immigration. I think most of us, we are immigrants, and we tried to think about all these topics, what kind of main topics we have in cooperation with democratic states where we are living right now, if we are speaking about struggle with the regime. But we saw that the main topic is that Belarus is not a counter-aggressor. We have to speak about this all the time, everywhere. We have to tell about this like about prayer. Oh my God, yeah, they are not an aggressors. Our media, they have to remember about this, first of all. But they have to speak loud about these moments, which demonstrates that Belarusian society is not an aggressor. And I will tell you that Belarusian army is not aggressor too, if we are speaking about Ukraine. And very clear example was yesterday on the border Makhro from Belarusian side. Then we have a day of military day. Yesterday, Ukraine celebrates, and the flag from Belarusian side on this Belarusian border, when it was the minute of silence, this flag on Belarusian border went down. So, and it's like phenomenal case, and we have to be proud, really proud of those border soldiers. I think, yeah, they will responsible for this, but we have to talk about this to all over the world, that we are not aggressor regime. Lukashenko's regime, yeah, of course, it's a regime. They are aggressors, they are tyranny, they are his despoty, but it's he and his team. And another topic which we were speaking about in our group, it's sanctions. So what sanctions are and what can we tell about them? It's very discussion topic because everybody is is looking for sanctions in different way. I thought a couple years ago that economical sanctions is very delicate and we have to think 1,000 times before we will use these sanctions. But now, okay. Belarusian economy is fall down. But what can we do? How we can help people in Belarus now? Or maybe some people from Soligorsk will kill all of us, these workers from Soligorsk. If we are speaking miners from Soligorsk, yeah, they will be disappointed. So personal sanctions, yeah, it's a good way. And we have to use these sanctions till the end of life, those responsible persons. But we think that we have to use personal sanctions also in the children context, in the context of the children of these responsible people. And of course, one of the main questions is political prisoners in prisons. Yeah, we are sure that main sanctions have to help for saving these people, not for money, but for saving the people. And all people in Belarus, we think that they have to fight. And of course, we remember that they have families in Belarus, and we have to make border open. And this is very big group of people, and we have to move without any problem.
And they said the most important chapter that we looked at, long-term program for stable financing, stable funding for civic initiatives. What do we mean by that? This is stable support offered to the development and growth of civil and civic initiatives abroad. They need support. Why? Because the majority of those who left their home country, they cannot integrate in a very fast way to reach decent level of life for themselves and their families. It costs time and efforts, and funding is indispensable. And we have to remember that actually in 2020 there was, let's say, a selection, negative selection. Best people had to flee the country, and representatives of civil society, heads of associations, NGOs, they had to flee. And at the moment, they can learn from their partners, Germany, Poland, the host countries, how they can get support from the state, some public funding, how they can cooperate. And there is this notion that non-commercial organizations, NGOs, do not have to compete. They have to be partners. The stronger the partnership, the stronger the organization or association, and better the results from their cooperation. Much better than when they only compete. And we believe it is extremely important to prepare the staff the reserve staff for future Belarus. We cannot teach everyone, educate everyone, leaders of democratic movement, so that they become experts in the future and they will become members of local authorities or legislative authorities. So we have to cooperate with our Western partners. We want to develop plans for sustainable development, plans, initiatives to support experts in the area of work as local authorities, municipalities, and governmental structures in the future. We can offer internship for physicians, for teachers, for artists, and Belarusian organizations have experience. For example, a colleague of mine is present here. We've been cooperating for more than 30 years. Ravensburg, Brest, our twin towns. We have the legal entity that was promoting twin city development. So we cooperate with artists, with experts, with physicians. It was offered by Germany to civil society in Belarus. And such twin towns, peer towns, there are thousands of them, with German towns, cities, with Poland, with the USA, Canada, Australia. We have our diasporas, the Belarusian diasporas there, and we support each other and we look for funding not only from donors and sponsors in Europe, but we can build better cooperation with diasporas all over the world. Right, so human resources, they are everything for Belarus. Do we have questions?
In English, will I be reading the results of this third working group? I was asked to do that because the participants of this working group, we had the honor of having well, people among whom we had former political prisoners and who are still vulnerable, and this is a delicate issue, so I was asked to read the results of this working group. This group discussed issues of supporting civil society within Belarus, inside Belarus, and also the protection of political prisoners at home and abroad. So the initial thesis, the initial idea is that changes in Belarus will begin within Belarus. And it is necessary to provide assistance to groups that are under pressure and that are inside Belarus and still exist. We know that thousands of activists resisting the regime are still remaining in Belarus. Several points the group made as a result of its discussion. Firstly, external stakeholders should systematically and flexibly support communities and registered organizations, groups, and civil activists within Belarus. When doing this, it is important to provide opportunities for the development of and maintenance of security of these groups, meaning physical security, digital security, and psychological security. It is necessary to support their sustainability and strategic development to increase their influence on possible democratic transition in Belarus. At the same time, it is necessary to actively use the experience of organizations, teams that already provide such assistance now, often doing it not publicly. Second point, it is important for the civil society in the EU, for democratic structures and for European countries to initiate the development and adoption by, for instance, the European Parliament of a resolution supporting Belarusian political prisoners. Such a resolution should include, firstly, demands for the release of these political prisoners. Secondly, demands for improving conditions of their detention now. And thirdly, it should understand and kind of draw towards the initiation of a dialogue, of a conversation regarding the future of these political prisoners and their release. The European Union, its funds and organizations should implement comprehensive programs aiming for the evacuation and subsequent integration and support to political prisoners and political migrants from Belarus. Those are the results of this working group that I was asked to read. Are there any questions to these points that were made by the group? If not, we can leave it as it is. All the materials will be published online. You will be able to read them and to forward them to all stakeholders for whom it will be relevant. Давайте подякуем удельникам этой.
Let us thank the participants of this workshop. A round of applause. Thank you. You can take your seats. Yulia, over to you. Last but not least. Right, so some final remarks to wrap up the result of our workshop and discussions. I'd like to hear something positive. Of course, we are living in difficult times, but in order to move forward, we have to be optimistic. Nevertheless, we have to see the light at the end of the tunnel and some direction forward so that we can do something and we can go forward, to have this feeling that we have started movement in a positive direction, that we can do something positive. I believe it is important for the entire Belarusian society. Just a few final remarks, please. Some hope for the future? I will do my best, and I'd like to look around and I will remember, "Усё буде добре, ми обіцяємо." Everything is going to be all right. We promise. Let's not forget that our hosts in our new office, the Belarusian Youth Hub, is promising that it's going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right and positive. But these are only general terms, so to say, some buzzwords, let's to say. Let us have some logistical approach. It will not change overnight. There was an official in the past who used to say, "We will not change Belarus overnight." I could switch off the TV set and I was sure he would say that. But he was right. We will not change things overnight. Not even within a few nights we are going to change the situation in Belarus. Especially now, when we don't see the breakthrough during the counter-offensive by Ukraine, and Putinism is still here, and Prigozhin's planned coup d'etat failed. Even we are not sure it was coup d'etat. And Lukashenko is supported by Putin. Although there are sanctions, Putin supports Lukashenko's regime. So what can positively be done, actually? And I can see that we need a chance, and I could hear it, that we have to keep the focus on Belarus so that there is no fatigue, because the war is going to be prolonged, and political emigration of many Belarusians is growing, and we can see some fatigue with the Belarusian issue, and we have to fight it. Western stakeholders see that there are interesting people, good people with great ideas who want to do something also within the country. We can hear some initiatives, and we could see it and hear today during the panel sessions and during the workshops. And Belarusians in the country and abroad will see that the West is still paying attention to Belarus and Belarusians. And if we succeed in this respect, it's going to be a good starting point, a good fundamental to use this chance in the future if there is some possibility to change things. Thank you, Kamil. As regards positive thinking, I personally believe we are all about the positive approach here. We are all positive here. I believe in communication, which is the basis, the fundamentals for any relationships to develop our common view of our common future, our future agenda. We can disagree with each other or agree with each other, but we have to talk to each other. I can see people who are interested in the agenda. They are not losing hope. Not only that, they have this understanding, this vision of Belarus of the future, something we want to achieve. We are still in touch with those who are in the country, although many of us are outside our country, our homeland. I believe it's a lot, and it's a very valuable initiative, and I'm grateful and happy we can see such events, such meetings. And when our partners from Europe are interested in supporting us and understanding that despite all these hostilities and despite the pain and despite this suffering, those atrocities, we are still Europeans to them, Belarusians, and Belarus are still dear to their heart. It is still a strategic partner now and in the future. I believe it's extremely positive. That's great. That's wonderful that we're doing it all together. And we will stick to it. We will not change our approach. Right. So thank you, Julia. Let us wrap up our workshop. I'd like to thank our participants, our partners, Euro Radio, which is transmitting it, Belarusian Youth Hub. Thank you for inviting us to your new wonderful office. Let's congratulate it with the home warming party as the event has turned into Warsaw session of the Minsk Forum 2023. Thank you and see you soon.